And we are here. We are here. We are there. We are practically everywhere. Hello, good evening, or good morning, or good and plenty, or something. Anyway, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining me. I'm back. I'm still Tad. I'm still reading. I'm still doing whatever it is that people do. That's what I'm doing. And I'm still very people-like. Anyway, doing my best. It's been a long and interesting week for a number of reasons, most of which I won't bore you with. Haven't had a huge amount of time to work, although I won't say I've been shut out from work. I've been working as much as I can, and when I can't actually sit in front of a keyboard and type, I'm planning. I'm in the last part of the book now, and the first draft of the book. But for me, this is important to understand. When I say first draft, I don't have a 6-month, 8-month rewriting process. Just my habit with all my books has been that like almost 90% of the work is in the first draft, in part because, at least the big books, in large part because they are so woven together. And by the time I've got through the first draft, or what I consider to be the first draft, the one that I will let people read, or few anyway, that everything is woven together so tightly that I certainly will change things and rewrite bits and all that in the editing process and fix things. But I very seldom say remove a whole chunk, because all of a sudden, every chapter that it's part of is now a third shorter or whatever. So I've mostly tried to solve these problems as early as possible, so I don't have to do that, just because these are these kind of house of cards, or these Jenga novels that I write. And it's like, if you can imagine a game of Jenga where, you've already got your tower built up really tall, and then somebody says, okay, now go out and take one piece of wood out of every other layer all the way down to the bottom, without toppling the whole tower. It doesn't work very well. So I am in the last, say, 100 pages of the first draft, which is, again, for me, most of the work is the first draft. But it was hard to work this week. We've got a lot of family stuff going on, a lot of domestic things that have to be dealt with. So, but of course, that doesn't mean anything when it comes to this. I do my best to make time. So I'm back home again today, and so time is being made so that I can have a chance to hang out with all of you lot. So let me think. Was there anything else of interest that I wanted to pass on to you? No, the only thing that I will say, just because for its weirdness value, is it was really interesting. I was looking up something the other day, and I stumbled across a quote from, it was like from something, and then it was bylined Tad Williams. I didn't even really recognize it. And so I clicked on it, and it took me to a quotes website, and I had a little section on it where they had like 50 quotes, from most of them from my books, not all of them. Because I know there's one that came out of my social media, which some of my friends have shared around over the years, which was in a discussion about the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil monkeys. And people were saying, oh, I would have a fourth monkey, and it would be do no evil or something. And I wrote something to the effect of, I would have 5 monkeys, and they would be see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, do whatever the hell you want, and expensive lawyer. And for some reason that made its way to an internet quote site, along with, many of the ones from my books, including some. This is my main claim to fame when the 22nd century comes along and they exhume old records of the era. They will find a few of my quotes in Reader's Digest. That's my claim to history, is that a couple of my quotes wound up in the words to live by section of Reader's Digest. But anyway, so it was odd and weird, and I recognized at least maybe 2/3 of them, but there were a bunch of them, and especially from Shadow March, or the Shadow March series, that I went, Well, it sounds like I'd say that. So yeah, I'm willing to believe that that is. Or one in a couple of places, it was obvious where it was from. So I couldn't doubt it. I just didn't remember having written it. But that'll happen after 30 plus years and 20 something novels, most of which are like, a third of a million words long, that you will forget some of the things you wrote. So it's kind of entertaining, I have to say, to be able to look at something and so not remember having written it that you can almost view it objectively and say, does that make any sense? Is that actually profound, or is it just jibber jabber? Is it just word salad? Which was fun. Anyway, it shows you how bored I was last night in the middle of the night, having nothing else to do better than looking up my own quotes on some weird site. Okay, so what else? Anything else I want to talk about? We could do an extra amount of reading tonight, I suppose, since I don't have a lot to say. No, not really. Not at the moment. When I've spent more time writing next week, I will be sure and, pay more attention to the actual process and pass some things along to you. But as I said, it's been a tough week for getting work done. There's just been too many other duties and things to do much. I've probably written 10, 15 pages all week, which for me is pathetic. That's just ridiculous for a professional full-time writer. Normally I try to do between 5 and 10 pages a day, minimum 5. And I usually work at least 6 days a week. So you can figure that out. That's 30 to 60 pages a week. And I probably only did 10 or 15. I was saying in a previous reading session that it's such it's a different kind of relief to be working on writing, because when you do a certain amount of work, you can actually look at it and go, yes, I did work today. I have put down something, not on paper anymore, but I have put down something in my manuscript that proves that I actually worked. But the concomitant problem, the thing that goes with it, the other side of the coin, as it were, is that when you have a week like this week, where I was working hard all bloody week long, but because it was not stuff in the furtherance of writing the manuscript, except when I was thinking, and that won't show up until, the next writing sessions. It's also then all of a sudden I'm going I only wrote X many pages, I'm a failure and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, 21st century middle-class people problems. So let me check in and see who has shown up to say hello. And the first up off the chat list, the chat stream, is Ray, who says greetings to all, and greetings to you, Ray. Ronnie, who says good morning, everyone, to whom I return. Good morning to you, Ronnie. Ty, hello, Ty. Good to see you too. Nice to have you aboard. Mark, good morning from sunny Manchester. Ah, yes. A very important place in our family for a number of reasons. It's where Deb and I first sort of fell for each other, and it's also where she went to university and where she was a habitué of the Manchester club scene and saw, a lot of those wonderful, amazing bands, and went to the hacienda and did all that stuff, which she will tell you about at length, if asked by anybody. And if I get up and walk away, it's not because I'm in any way upset about it, or it's just I've heard the stories so many times, and I know there's always going to be follow-up question. Oh, wow, did you see such and such? What was such and such like? Who did, was that, and it's like, okay, this is a good time for me to go to the bar or whatever. But anyway, so I hope you're having a good time in Manchester. Debbie, good morning, good morning. Lisa, my sister-in-law, hello, sweetie. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing okay. Hope your mom's doing better. If you didn't know, we've got a couple of COVID sufferers, not in the household here, but our two who moved up north. Both are down with the COVID now, although fortunately, thank goodness, the current variants, which are milder. So we're not in, as we would have been, I just said to Deb, if this had been a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we would have been in real fear for our kids' safety because of pulmonary, lung and heart issues. But this is the milder variant, thank goodness. And so that they'll both be okay. both of them. And the other one has asthma that's up there too. So, you know, it's not like either of them are going to have an easy time, but thank God it's a weaker variant. Anyway, so who else was I saying? So that was my sister-in-law I'm saying hello to. Hello. Kristen, hello. Good to see you. Wouter, good morning from chilly Holland after too short a night. Aw, that's okay. I appreciate you're doing your best to show up. Jessica, hello. Welcome. Good to have you. Petra, good morning. Iris, good day part to all. Good day part to you too. Julian, good morning. Felina, hello. Expensive lawyer. Yeah, that was, like I said, that's the only one of, despite the fact that I think I'm just effervescently witty in social media, that was the only bit that made the quotes list. Everything else was, you know, never make your home in a place, and a well-aimed spear is better than 3 or something. You know, all those quotes from Dragonbone Chair and things like that, some of which we will read in this course of reading this book. And I will do my best not to stop and say, that's a Reader's Digest quote. They put it in Reader's Digest, so people all over the world would read it. Okay, so who was I saying hello to last? I think it was Iris, Julian, Felina, yes. Holger, hello, good to see you. And celebrating your wife's birthday today. Well, excellent. And happy birthday, which is, I forgot, oh my God, I'm gone blank on the Frohe Geburtstag, for lack of a better term. Frohe Geburtstag. And I know there's a better way to say that, but I've forgotten it at the moment. So I just threw in the Frohe, because I know you can do that with like Christmas and stuff. Frohe Weihnachten. Anyway, who else have we got here? And Becky. Hello, Becky. Good to see you. And I think that's all the people who've checked in to this point. So at this stage, I'm going to actually start reading about 5 minutes earlier than I usually do. And I hope you can stand the excitement. That really sounds like that should be the title of a They Might Be Giants song. I was just watching a documentary on They Might Be Giants, who, not surprisingly, are among my favorite musical groups. Those of you who live outside the United States, I don't know how well known they are in places like Germany and the Netherlands, but They Might Be Giants are really one of the great musical pleasures of life. Okay, so the last thing we saw was Simon had come in and Morgenes had caught him out in the forged document for trying to get into the guards, basically, where Simon and his friend Jeremias had tried to get a document that Morgenes had signed that make it look like they were both being recommended for the guards. So anyway. And then Simon tried to apologize. And, well, I'll just go back a paragraph or two just to give you the sense of where we were. Please forgive the stupidity of a kitchen boy, Doctor. A kitchen boy who thought he could be more than that. In the silence that followed this brave speech, Simon heard Morgenes make a strange sound. Was he actually crying? But a moment later, it became all too clear. Morgenes was chuckling. No, laughing, trying to muffle it behind his billowing sleeve. Simon whirled, ears burning like coals. Morgenes caught his eye for a moment, then looked away, shoulders heaving. Oh, lad, oh, lad, he wheezed at last, putting a restraining hand out toward the outraged Simon. Don't go. Don't be angry. You would be wasted on the field of battle. You should be a great lord and win the victories at treaty table that always outweigh victories of the field, or an escritor of the church and wheedle the eternal souls of the rich and dissolute. Morgenes snickered again and chewed on his beard until the fit passed. Simon stood stone still, face a frown, unsure if he was being paid compliment or insult. Finally, the doctor regained his composure. He vaulted to his feet and made his way to the ale butt. A long swallow completed the calming procedure, and he turned to the youth with a smile. "Oh, Simon, bless you! Don't let the clanking and boasting of King Elias's good fellows and bravos impress you so much. You have a keen wit. Well, sometimes, anyway, and you have gifts you know nothing about yet. Learn what you can from me, young hawk, and those others you find who can also teach you. Who knows what your fate will be? There are many kinds of glory." He upended the butt for another frothy mouthful. After a moment's careful inspection of Morgenes to make sure that the last speech was not just another tease, Simon at last permitted himself a shy grin. He liked being called young hawk. "Very well, then. I am sorry that I told you a lie, but if I have keen wit, why will you not show me anything important?" "Like what?" Morgenes asked, his smile fading. "Oh, I don't know. Magic or something." "Magic!" Morgenes hissed. "Is that all you think about, boy? Do you think I am some hedge wizard, some cheap cloth court conjurer, that I should show you tricks?" Simon said nothing. "I am still angry with you for lying to me," the doctor added. "Why should I reward you?" "I will do any chores you want at any hour," Simon said. "I'll even wash the ceiling." "Here now," Morgenes responded, "I will not be bullied. I tell you what, boy, leave off this endless fascination with magic, and I will answer all your other questions for a month entire, and you shall not have to write down a one. How's that, hey?" Simon squinted, but said nothing. "Well, then I shall let you read my manuscript on the life of Prester John," the doctor offered. "I remember you asked about that once or twice." Simon squinted harder. "If you'll teach me magic," he suggested, "I'll bring you one of Judith's pies every week, and a barrel of Stancher Dark from the larder." "There now!" Morgenes barked triumphantly. "See? Do you see, boy? So convinced are you that magical tricks will bring you power and good luck that you are quite willing to steal to bribe me into teaching you. No, Simon, I cannot make bargains with you over this." Simon was angry again, but took a deep breath and pinched his arm. "Why are you so set against it, doctor?" he asked when he felt calmer. "Because I am a scullion?" Morgenes smiled. "Even if you still labor in the scullery, Simon, lad, you are no scullion. You are my apprentice. No, there is no deficiency in you except for your age and immaturity. You simply do not comprehend what you are asking." Simon slumped onto a stool. "I don't understand," he murmured. "Exactly." Morgenes downed another gulp of ale. "What you call magic is really only the action of things of nature. Elemental forces much like fire and wind. They respond to natural laws, but those laws are very hard to learn and understand. Many may never be understood." "But why don't you teach me the laws?" "For the same reason I wouldn't give a burning torch to an infant sitting on a pile of straw. The infant, and no insult is meant, Simon. The infant is not prepared for the responsibility. Only those who have studied many years in many other subjects and disciplines can begin to master the art that fascinates you so. Even then they are not necessarily fit to wield any power." The old man drank again, wiped his lips, and smiled. By the time most of us are capable of using the art, we are old enough to know better. It is too dangerous for the young, Simon. But if you say but priorities, I shall kick you, Morgenes said. I told you once he is a madman, or as good as. He sees only the power to be gained from wielding the art and ignores the consequences. Ask me about the consequences, Simon. He asked dully, what about the cons? You cannot exert force without paying for it, Simon. If you steal a pie, someone else goes hungry. If you ride a horse too fast, the horse dies. If you use the art to open doors, Simon, you have little choice of house guests. Simon, disappointed, glared around the dusty room. Why do you have those signs painted over your door, Doctor? He asked at last. So no one else's house guests come a-visiting me. Morgenes stooped to put his flagon down, and as he did so, something gold and shining fell out of the collar of his gray robe, tumbling down to dangle swinging on its chain. The doctor seemed not to notice. I should send you back now. But remember this lesson, Simon, one fit for kings, or the sons of kings. Nothing is without cost. There is a price to all power, and it is not always obvious. Promise me you will remember that. I promise, Doctor. Simon, feeling the effects of the earlier crying and shouting, was as light-headed as if he had run a race. What is that thing? He asked, bending forward to watch the golden object pendulum back and forth. Morgenes held it out on his palm, giving Simon a brief look. It's a feather, the doctor said shortly. As he dropped the gleaming thing back into his robe, Simon saw that the quill end of the golden feather was attached to a writing scroll carved of pearly white stone. No, it's a pen, he said wonderingly. A quill pen, isn't it? Very well, it's a pen, Morgenes growled. Now, if you have nothing better to do than interrogate me about my personal ornaments, be off with you. And don't forget your promise. Remember. Wandering back to the servants' quarters across the hedged courtyard gardens, Simon wondered at the events of a strange morning. The doctor had found out about the letter, but didn't punish him or throw him out, never to return. However, he had also refused to teach Simon anything about magic. And why had his assertion about the quill pendant irritated the old man so? Pondering, plucking absently at the dry, unbudded rose bushes. Start that sentence again. Pondering, plucking absently at the dry, unbudded rose bushes, Simon pricked his finger on a hidden thorn. Cursing, he held up his hand. The bright blood was a red bead on his fingertip, a single crimson pearl. He stuck his finger in his mouth and tasted salt. In the darkest part of the night, on the very cusp of All Fool's Day, a tremendous crash reverberated through the hayholt. It rattled sleepers awake in their beds and drew a long sympathetic hum from the dark bell clusters in Green Angel Tower. Some of the young priests, gleefully ignoring midnight prayers on this, their once-yearly night of freedom, were struck from their stools as they sat swilling wine and insulting Bishop Demetis. The concussive force of the blow was so great that even the drunkest felt a wave of terror run through them, as though in a deep sunken part of themselves they had known all along that God would eventually make his displeasure felt. But when the ragged, startled crew milled out to the courtyard to see what had happened, shaven acolyte heads like so many pale mushrooms in the silky moonlight, There was no shape of the universal cataclysm they had all expected, except for a few faces of other recently wakened castle dwellers peering curiously from the windows. The night was untroubled and clear. Simon was dreaming in his spare curtained bed, nested among the treasures he had so carefully collected. In his dream he climbed a pillar of black ice, every straining inch upward eroded by a nearly identical slip backward. He clutched a parchment in his teeth, a message of some sort. At the topmost point of the cold burning pillar was a door. In the doorway a dark presence crouched, waiting for him, waiting for the message. As he finally reached the threshold, a hand snaked out, grasping the parchment in an inky, vaporous fist. Simon tried to slide back, to fall away, but another dark claw jabbed out from the doorway and caught his wrist. He was drawn upward toward a pair of eyes red bright as paired crimson holes in the belly of an infernal black oven. As he woke, gasping from sleep, he heard the sullen voices of the bells moaning their displeasure as they descended back into cold, brooding sleep. Only one person in all the great castle claimed to have seen anything. Caleb, the horse boy, Shem's slow-witted assistant, had been terribly excited and unable to sleep all night. The next morning he was to be crowned King of Fools and carried on the shoulders of the young priests as they marched through the castle, singing bawdy songs and tossing oats and flower petals. They would take him to the refectory hall, where he would preside over the all-fools banquet from his mock throne built of Glenawent river reeds. Caleb had heard the great roar, he told any who would listen, but he had also heard words. A booming voice, speaking a language that the stable boy could only say was bad. He also seemed to think he had seen a great snake of fire leap from the window of Yeldon's tower, looping itself around the spire in flaming coils and then splintering into a shower of sparks. No one paid Caleb's story much heed. There was a reason the simple-minded boy had been chosen King of Fools. Also, the dawn brought something to the Hayholt that eclipsed any thunder in the night, and even the prospect of Fool's Day. Daylight revealed a line of clouds, rain clouds, crouching on the northern horizon like a flock of fat gray sheep. By draws be crimson mallet, Odin's one dread eye, and our Lord Osiris. Something must be done. Dukas Grimner, nearly forgetting his Adenite piety in his wrath, brought his scarred, fur-knuckled fist down on the great table hard enough to make the crockery jump 6 feet away. His broad body swayed like an overcargoed ship in a squall as he cast his eyes from one end of the table to the other, then brought his fist down again. A goblet teetered briefly, then surrendered to gravity. "Steps must be taken, sire," he roared, and tugged angrily at his belt-length whiskers. "The Frost March is in a state of be-damned anarchy. While I sit here with my men like so many knots on a log, the Frost March road has become a byway for bandits, and I've had no word from Elvrithala for 2 months or more." The Duke blew out a great gust of air that made his mustache flutter. "My son is in dread need, and I can do nothing. Where is the High King's ward of safety, my lord?" Reddening like a beet, the Rimmersman dropped back into his chair. Elias raised a languid eyebrow and surveyed the other knights scattered about the circumference of the table, far outnumbered by the empty chairs between them. The torches in the wall sconces threw long, wavering shadows onto the high tapestries. "Well, now that the aged but honorable Duke has made himself known. Would anyone else like to join his suit? Elias toyed with his own gold goblet, scuffing it along the crescent-shaped scars in the oak. Is there anyone else who feels that the High King of Ostenard has deserted his subjects? At the king's right hand, Guthwolf smirked. Isgrimner, smarting, began to climb back to his feet, but Eolair of Nadmulla laid a restraining hand on the old duke's arm. Sire, Eolair said, neither Isgrimner nor anyone else who has spoken is accusing you of anything. The Hernistir man placed his palms flat on the table. What we're all saying, then, is that we're asking, entreating, my lord, that you pay more heed to the problems of those of your subjects who live outside your view here at the Hayhold. Perhaps thinking his words too harsh, Eolair summoned a smile onto his mobile face. The problems, they are there, he continued. Outlawry is everywhere in the north and west. Starving men have few scruples, and the drought just ended has brought out the worst in everyone. Elias, unspeaking, continued to stare at Eolair after the Westerner had finished. Isgrimner couldn't help noticing how pale the king looked. It reminded the older man of the time in the southern islands that he had nursed Elias's father through a bout of fever. That bright eye, he thought, that nose like a hunting bird. Odd how these bits, these brief expressions and reminders go on from generation after generation, long after the man and his works are dead. Isgrimner thought of Miriamel, Elias's pretty, melancholy child. He wondered what baggage of her father she would carry on, what disparate images of her beautiful haunted mother, dead 10 years now. Or was it 12? Across the table, Elias shook his head slowly, as if waking from a dream or trying to dispel the wine fumes from his head. Isgrimner saw Priorites, seated at the king's left side, quickly withdraw his pale hand from Elias's sleeve. There was something abhorrent about the priest, Isgrimner thought, not for the first time, something far deeper than merely his hairlessness and scratchy voice. Well, Count Eolair, the king said, an elusive smile briefly twitching on his lips, as long as we are speaking of obligations and such, what does your kinsman King Luth have to say about the message I sent him? He leaned forward with apparent interest, his powerful hands folded on the table. Eolair replied in measured tones, choosing his words with care. As always, Lord, he sends his respect and love to noble Erkenland. He does feel, though, that he cannot afford to send any more in the way of taxes. Tribute? Snorted Guthwolf, picking his nails with a slim poniard. In the way of taxes, right now, Eolair finished, ignoring the interruption. Is that so? Elias asked and smiled again. Actually, my lord, Eolair deliberately misread the smile's import. He sent for me to ask you for royal help. You know the troubles the drought has caused, and the plague. The Erkenguard must work with us to keep the trade roads open. Oh, they must they? King Elias's eyes glinted, and a tiny throb began between the strong cords of his neck. It is must now, is it? He leaned farther forward, shaking off Priorites' serpent-swift restraining hand. And who are you, he growled, the weanling step-cousin of a sheep-herder king, who is only a king at all by my father's weak-willed forbearance? Who are you to tell me must? My lord, cried old Fluirin of Naban in horror, flapping his spotted hands, mighty hands once, now bent and curled like a hawk's feet. My lord, he panted, your anger is kingly, but Hernesteer is a trusted ally under your father's high ward, not to mention his country was the birthland of your saintly mother, rest her soul. Please, sire, do not speak so of Luth. Elias swung his emerald gaze to Fluirin, and seemed about to focus his wrath on that diminished hero, but Pyrates tugged the king's dark sleeve again, and leaned close to mouth a few words in Elias's ear. The king's expression softened, but the line of his jaw remained taut as a bowstring. Even the air over the table seemed pulled tight, a grinding net of awful possibility. Forgive me for the unforgivable, Count Eolair, Elias said at last, a strange, stupid grin stretching the corners of his mouth wide. Forgive me my harsh, causeless words. It has been less than a month since the rains began, and it was a difficult 12-month for us all before that. Eolair nodded, his clever eyes uneasy. Of course, Highness, I understand. Please, you'll grant me your pardon for provoking you. Across the oval table, Fluirin folded his mottled hands with a satisfied nod. Isgrimner now rose to his feet, ponderous as a brown bear climbing an ice floe. I too, sire, shall try to speak in a gentle fashion, though you all know it is clean against my soldier's nature. Elias' cheerful grimace remained. Very good, Uncle Bearskin. We will all practice gentility together. What would you of your king? The Duke of Elvritshala took a deep breath, nervously finger-tangling his beard. Mine and Eolair's people are in dire need, Lord. For the first time since the earliest part of John Presbyter's reign, the Frostmarch Road has again become impassable. Blizzards in the north, highway robbers further south. The Royal North Road past Weldhelm is not much better. We need these roads open and kept so. Isgrimner leaned to the side and spat on the floor. Fluirin winced. Many of the clan villages, according to my son Izorn's last letter, are suffering for lack of food. We cannot trade our goods. We cannot keep contact with the more remote clans. Guthwolf, carving at the table's edge, yawned conspicuously. Hayforth and Godvig, two younger barons wearing prominent green sashes, quietly tittered. Surely, Duke, Guthwolf drawled, leaning back against the arm of his chair like a sun-warmed cat. Surely, you don't blame us for that? Has our lord the king powers like God Almighty to stop the snows and storms with a wave of his hand? I do not suggest that he should, Isgrimner rumbled. Perhaps, Pyrates said from the head of the table, his wide smile strangely inappropriate, you also blame the king for his brother's disappearance, as we have heard it rumored? Never! Isgrimner was genuinely shocked. Beside him, Eolair narrowed his eyes as if seeing something unexpected. Never! The Duke repeated, looking helplessly at Elias. Now, men, I know Isgrimner would never think such a thing, the king said, waving a listless hand. Why, old Uncle Bearskin dandled both Josua and myself on his knees. I hope, of course, that Josua has suffered no harm. The fact that he has not appeared at Naglemund in all this time is troubling. But if anything foul is afoot, it is not my conscience that will need soothing. But as he finished, for a moment Elias did look troubled, staring at nothing as though he wandered through a confusing memory. "Let me get back to the point, Lord," Isgrimner said. "The northern roads are not safe, and weather is not the only factor. My carls are spread too thin. We need more men, strong men, to make the frost march safe again. The marchland is aswarm with robbers and outlaws and worse things, some say." Priorites leaned forward interestedly, chin perched on long-fingered hands like a child watching rain through a window, sunken eyes catching the torch's gleam. "What worse things, noble Isgrimner?" "It's not important. People think things, that is all. You know how the march dwellers are." The Rimmersman trailed off, taking an embarrassed draught of his wine. Eolair rose. "If he will not voice his thoughts, what we have heard in the markets and among the servants, I will. The northern people are afraid. There are things going about that cannot be explained by the deadly weather and bad harvests. In my land, we do not need to name things, angels or devils. We of Hernester, we of the West, know that things walk upright on this earth that are not men, and we know whether to fear them or not. We Hernesteri knew the Scythi when they still lived in our fields, when the high mountains and wide meadows of Erkenland were theirs." The torches were guttering now, and Eolair's high forehead and cheeks seemed to shine with a faint scarlet radiance. "We have not forgotten," he said quietly. Excuse me. His voice carried even to half-sleeping Godvig, who lifted his drunken head like a hound hearing a distant call. "We, the Hernesteri, remember the days of the giants and the days of the northern curse, the white foxes. So now we speak plainly. Evil is abroad in this ill-omened winter and spring. It is not only the bandits who prey on travelers and who cause the disappearance of isolated farmers. The people of the north are afraid. We, the Hernesteri," Priorites' mocking voice lanced out through the silence, skewering the spell of otherworldliness. "We, the Hernesteri, our noble pagan friend claims to speak plainly." Priorites traced an exaggerated tree on the breast of his unpriestly red vestments. Elias's expression turned to sly good humor. "Very well," the priest continued. "He has delivered us the plainest pack of riddles and shadow talk I have ever heard. Giants and elves." Priorites flicked his hand and his sleeve fluttered above the dinner plates, as if His Majesty the King did not have enough to worry about. His brother vanished, the subjects hungry and frightened, as if even the king's great heart was not near to breaking. And you, Eolair, you bring him pagan ghost stories from the mouths of old wives. "He be pagan, yes," growled Isgrimner, "but there be more Adenite goodwill in Eolair than in the pack of lazy pups I have seen lolling around this court." Baron Hayforth barked, drawing drunken laughter from Godvig. "Lolling around while the people have been living on meager hope and less harvest. It's all right then, Eolair." "It's all right then, Isgrimner," said Eolair wearily. "My lords," Fluiren flapped. "Well, I will not hear you insulted so for your honesty," Isgrimner rumbled at Eolair. He lifted his fist to hammer the table again, then thought better of it, bringing it instead to his breast, where it enfolded the wooden tree hanging there. "Forgive my outburst, my king, but Count Eolair tells the truth. Whether their fears have substance or no, the people do fear." "And what do they fear, dear old Uncle Bearskin?" asked the king as he held his goblet for Guthwolf to refill. "They fear the dark," the old man said, all dignity now. "They fear the winter's dark, and they fear the world will grow darker still." Eolair turned his empty cup upside down on the table. "In Urchester's market, the few merchants who have been able to come south fill the people's ears with news of a strange vision. I have heard the same story so many times that I do not doubt everyone in the town has heard it too." Eolair paused and looked at the Rimmersman, who nodded once gravely, creasing his grey-shot beard. "Well?" said Elias. "In the Frostmarch wastes at night, a wonderful thing has been seen. A cart, a black cart drawn by white horses." "How unusual!" Guthwolf sneered, but Pyrates and Elias locked eyes of a sudden. The king raised an eyebrow as he rechanneled his gaze to the Westerner. "Go on." "Those who have seen it say it appeared a few days after All Fool's Day. They say the cart bears a casket, and that black-robed monks walk behind it." "And to what heathen nature sprite do the peasants attribute this vision?" Elias leaned slowly backward in his chair until he was looking down the bridge of his nose at the Hernister man. "They say, my king, that it is your father's death cart, begging your pardon, sire, and that as long as the land suffers, he shall not sleep peacefully in his barrow." After an interval, the king spoke, his voice barely louder than the hissing of the torches. "Well, then," he said, "we will have to make sure my father gets his well-earned rest, will we not?" "Look at them," old Towser thought, as he dragged his bent leg and tired body up the aisle of the throne room. "Look at them all lollying and smirking. They look more like heathen chiefs of the Thrithings than Adenite knights of Erkenland." Elias's courtiers hooted and called out as the jester limped by, wagging their heads at him as though he were a Naraxi ape on a chain. Even the king and the king's hand, Earl Guthwolf, whose chair was pulled up next to the throne, contributed to the rough jests. Elias sat with a leg up on the arm of the Dragonbone chair, like a farm lout on a gate. Only the king's young daughter, Miriamel, sat stiffly silent, face solemn, shoulders pulled back as if she were expecting a blow. Her honey-colored hair, which came from neither her dark father nor raven-haired mother, hung down on either side of her face like curtains. "She looks like she's trying to hide behind that hair," thought Towser. "What a shame. They say that the freckled darling is stubborn and forward, but all I see in her eyes is fear. She deserves better, I suspect, than the swaggering wolves who prowl our castles these days. But they say her father's promised her already to that p-damned drunken strutter, Fangbald." He did not make swift progress, his path to the throne hindered by the hands that reached out to pat or lightly slap at him. It was said to be good luck to touch the head of a dwarf. Towser was not one, but he was old, very old, and bent. And it amused the courtiers to treat him as if he were. He reached Elias's throne at last. The king's eyes were red-rimmed with too much drink or too little sleep, or, most likely, both. Elias turned his green gaze downward on the little man. "So, my dear Towser," he said, "you grace us with your company." The jester noticed that the buttons of the king's white blouse were undone, and that there was a gravy stain on the beautiful doe-skin gloves tucked into his belt. Yes, sire, I have come. Towser essayed a bow, difficult with his stiff leg. A sputter of mirth came from the lords and ladies. Before you entertain us, oldest jester, Elias said, swinging his leg down off the throne arm and fixing the old man with his most sincere stare, may I perhaps beg of you a small favor? A question I have long wanted to ask. Of course, my king. Then tell me, Towser dear, however, did you happen to be given a dog's name? Elias raised his eyebrows in mock puzzlement, turning first to look at Guthwolf, who grinned, and then to Miriamel, who looked away. The rest of the courtiers laughed and whispered behind their hands. I was not given a dog's name, sire, said Towser quietly. I chose it for myself. What? Said Elias, turning to the old man once more. I don't think that I heard you properly. I gave myself a dog's name, sire. Your noble father used to tease me for being so faithful, because I would always go with him, would be at his side. As a jest, he named one of his hounds Cruin, which was my given name. The old man turned slightly so as to play to the crowd more fully. So then, quoth I, if the dog be given my name, by John's will, then I shall take the dogs in turn. I have never answered since to any name but Towser, and never shall. Towser permitted himself a tiny smile. It is possible that your revered father regretted somewhat his joke thereafter. Elias did not seem altogether pleased with this answer, but laughed sharply anyway and slapped his knee. A saucy dwarf, is he not? He said, looking around. The others assembled, trying to take the king's mood, laughed politely, all but Miriamel, who looked down on Towser from her high-backed chair, her face caught in an intricate expression whose meaning he could not unpuzzle. Well, said Elias, if I were not the good king that I am, were I, say, for instance, a pagan king like Hernistir's Luth, I might have thy minuscule wrinkled head off for speaking so of my late father. But of course I am not such a king. Oh, of course not, sire, Towser said. Are you come to sing for us, then, or to tumble? We hope not, since you appear over frail for such antics. Or what? Come, tell us. Elias eased himself back in his throne and clapped for more wine. To sing, Majesty, the jester replied. He took the lute from off his shoulder and began to turn the pegs, bringing it into tune. As a young page scurried over to fill the king's cup, Towser looked up to the ceiling where the banners of Ostenard's knights and nobles hung before the rain-splashed upper windows. The dust was now gone, and the cobwebs dispersed, but to Towser the bright colors of the pennoncelles seemed false, too bright, like the painted skin of a drab who hopes to mimic her own younger days, thus destroying what true beauty remains. As the nervous page finished filling the goblets of Guthwolf, Fengbald, and the others, Elias waved his hand at Towser. My lord, he nodded, I will sing of another good king. This one an unfortunate and sad monarch, however. I do not like sad songs, said Fengbald. He was predictably well into his cups. Beside him, Guthwolf smirked. Hush! The king's hand made a show of elbowing his companion. If we do not like the tune when he has finished, then we can make the dwarf hop. Towser cleared his throat and strummed, singing then in his thin, sweet voice. Old King Juniper, mickle old was he, Snowy white his beard that hung from chin to bony knee. Noble old King Juniper, sitting on his throne, called, "Now bring my sons to me, for soon I will be gone." They brought him then his princely sons. They came with hounds and hawks. The younger hight Prince Hawley, the older Prince Hemlock. "We have heard thy summons, sire, and left our hunt withal." So Hemlock said, "What wouldst thou, that thou bidst us to thy hall?" "I soon must die, my princely sons," the aged king he said, "and would see peace between thou twain when I at last am dead." "I do not think I like the sound of this song," growled Guthwolf. "It has a mocking tone." Elias bade him be silent. His eyes gleamed as he signaled Towser to continue. "But, father dear, why dost thou fear? Prince Hemlock has the right." Said Hawley, "I could not counter him and be a godly knight." His mind thus eased, the king did bid his sons go out again, and thanked merciful Aedon that they were such godly men. But in the heart of Hemlock, who was the king to be, Prince Hawley's words so gentle sparked a fire of infamy. That speaks so sweet a princely tongue must wicked heart disguise, thought Hemlock. "'Gainst my crafty kin I must some scheme devise." So fearing then the gentle heart that beat in Hawley's breast, he took a draught of poison from out the lining of his vest. And when the brothers sate at meat, he poured it in a cup, and bade Prince Hawley drink it down. "Enough! This is treason!" roared Guthwolf as he leaped up, knocking his chair back among the startled courtiers. His long sword hissed free of its scabbard. Had Fingbald not sprung up in befuddlement, entangling his arm, Guthwolf would have lunged at the quailing Towser. Elias, too, was quickly on his feet. "Sheathe that bodkin, you lackwit," he shouted. "No one draws sword in the king's throne room." He turned from the snarling Earl of Utniate to the jester. The old man, having recovered somewhat from the alarming spectacle of Guthwolf enraged, struggled to put on dignity. "Do not think, dwarfish creature, that we are amused by your little song," the king snarled, "or that your long service for my father makes you untouchable. But do not think either that you can prickle the royal skin with such dull barbs. Get you out of my sight." I confess, sire, that the song was a new minted one," began the jester shakily. His belled hat was askew. "But it was not—" "Get you hence!" Elias spat, all pale face and beast's eyes. Towser hobbled quickly out of the throne room, shuddering at the king's last wild look and the caged, hopeless face of his daughter, Princess Miriamel. Ooh, that was a good one. Ended the chapter bang on 2 o'clock my time. Excellent. Excellent. Couldn't be better. Anyway, lovely to see you all, including all of you who signed in after I originally said hello, and wishing you all the best. Sally, good to see you. And I saw somebody else in here I hadn't said hello to. Oh, your sis Suzanne. Hello, Suzanne, and various others. So a great pleasure. Becky asked the question: when you write the songs, do you have a time in mind, or are you just an improv master? Do you mean tune, or a time for like when this would have been? All the songs I write are in most cases are keyed to what culture they come from, what roughly that culture would be comparable to in a world that we know. So the world of the central part of Ostenard, where Simon grows up, the kingdoms of men, is very much kind of 14th century into very early 15th century in terms of its level of technology. And so the music commensurate, sort of high Middle Ages. As far as the tune, I just was making that up as I went. I can write tunes, but I confess I didn't do it for that. I just, I got to it and went, oh crap, there's a song in this one, and just did my best. So if that's what you were asking. And as a matter of fact, that's all I do. I mean, Sebastian Barvinek has written some really lovely songs with actual melodies based on some of the words in especially the Ostenard books. Me, I just make it up as I go, which is kind of how I do everything, including the books. It just takes longer with books. Anyway, with that, I'm going to thank you so much once again for joining me. And it's a great pleasure, as always. And after a long and occasionally difficult week, it's even more of a revivifying experience to have some contact for all you guys and just to do something fun. And reading is fun. I hope listening is fun too. With that, I say I will be back at 7 p.m. to do the next section, and starting chapter 11. For those of you who are able to be there for that. If not, obviously, it's going to be available on Chris Fab's, I'm pronouncing your name very American, Chris Fab's YouTube channel. And it will also be on my social media, right where you probably watching it now. It will still stay there. So with that, I say again, thank you so much. Remember, anybody can get COVID these days, and even if it's not as dangerous as it was, it's still a miserable, miserable thing. So be aware of the people around you who may have issues, health issues, and be careful in terms of the possibilities of spreading germs around. Take good care of yourselves, take good care of the people that you care about, and keep an eye out for people you don't know, but who may need some help too, or don't know very well, but who need some help too. And with that, I thank you, and thank you for joining me, and I will see some of you at 7 p.m., and I will see some of you next week, and I will see all of you well and happy. So, peace, twice, thanks, and good night.